Welcome to THW What's Kraken Show, hosted by Tom Pepper. That's me, Sean Raggio, and Adam Kierszenblat. Presented by the Hockey Writers, we talk Seattle Kraken hockey every week on iHeartRadio, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to check out our written work at thehockeywriters.com and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. So this is our debut episode here. We tried one out last week, had a few technical glitches, but we're back here. So happy to see you guys again, and we're going to cover some of the same sort of things we were talking about last week. So we're going to go through some expansion draft stuff, some entry draft stuff, just so our new listeners can kind of get a sense of what we think of the roster and where this team's going. So let's jump right into it. Let's go to the expansion draft. So the Kraken, of course, focused a lot on prospects in that draft. There was a lot of big names on the table. They had Price, Tarasenko, Van Riemsdyk. They passed on all of those guys and primarily just went for the young, unproven guys. What were your thoughts on this? I'll start on you, Adam.
Well, it's an interesting strategy for sure. We don't know exactly how this team is going to look because it seems like every time that they have a direction, they go in the opposite with like a signing or a trade or something so far. So it's going to be interesting, but there are some players for sure that are going to be making big differences. I think this team is going to be very defensive and that you're going to see a lot of 2-1 games at the Climate Pledge Arena next year.
I think that it just proves that they're going to be building through free agency, and we've already seen it start off a little bit, not maybe the moves that we would have expected them to make, but I definitely think going young isn't bad to start. It's kind of hard to get a vibe as to whether or not they're looking to make a push for the playoffs their first year. Obviously, you want to, but you're not 100% sure based on their build if they're going to be capable. I think that taking a couple of young guys, Hayden Fleury and Cale Fleury, as a side note, I thought that was pretty classy, uniting a couple brothers on the same team too.
Yeah, it was a very interesting draft strategy they went with. I don't think many people got their mock drafts correct that day. There were quite a few surprises in there. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but I think a lot of people assumed that the Kraken would be making a splash in free agency to kind of make up for missing out on those bigger names that were available to them, and they did. So we will get into that later in the show. Did you guys have a favorite selection from the expansion draft? Someone you think is going to bring a lot to this team, whether that's now or make a big impact in the future? Go to you, Sean.
Yanni Gourde was a fantastic selection. I think from a fan perspective, they're going to love him with the way he plays. He brings grit, but he can also score. Now, I don't necessarily – he can play on the first line. I don't think you want him there. If he's deeper in the lineup, second line for sure, third line on a great team, as we just saw, then that's a deep team. You're going to like that. But I definitely think he's going to bring a lot to this team, and he's going to be fun to watch. He's going to be one of the guys in the locker room bringing it together from the start.
For sure. Adam, any thoughts?
For me, it's Mason Appleton. He's going to be playing a little bit farther down the lineup, probably on the third line, but this is the perfect third line winger that you want on a team. 1 year, $900,000, 25 years old. He's coming off a career year of 25 points. Now he is he does have salary arbitration next year, which means that you might have to buck up a little bit, but this is a guy that brings energy, that can kill penalties if needed, can help shut down the other team's top pairing. And I know that there were quite a few teams that were interested in him. So luckily Seattle got him.
Yeah, for sure. My pick, I'll go a third different player. Mine was Chris Driedger, and I absolutely love that selection. And again, we'll get into the free agency stuff later, but I think he's going to be a great goalie for the Kraken. I mean, he came off .927 save percentage last year, 14-6-3 record with the Panthers. Season before, .938 save percentage in 12 games, 7-2-1 record. This guy's been able to prove himself, at least playing with those minimal amount of games. And I mean, the concern before free agency, if he was going to come in and be the number one starter, could he handle all of the starting increase in games? Because he hasn't started a ton of games in a season. He hasn't served as a full-time starter before. And in free agency, it looks like the Kraken have solved that issue. So I had Chris Driedger as my number one favorite from the expansion draft before, and the pick looks even better now after free agency. So I think he's going to have a big impact here, and he's going to be a great goalie in Seattle for a long time to come. And so with that, we'll get into the other draft that happened with the Kraken. So the entry draft. So Matty Beniers selected second overall to the Kraken. Not a huge shocker. A lot of people saw this coming with Owen Power going first overall to the Sabres. What were your thoughts on this pick? Do you think it was the right pick? What do you think he's going to bring to the organization? Go to you, Sean.
Excuse me, I was muted. That's the future captain of the Seattle Kraken, 100%. He's been compared to players like Jonathan Toews and Patrice Bergeron, and those are comparisons that you love to see from your number 2 overall pick. I think on the ice, of course, two-way play is going to be solid for them. He'll play in all situations, and I'm very excited to see what he's like in that community, really bringing fans in.
Your thoughts on the pick, Adam?
So for me, he fits into that number 2 center role, kind of that shutdown center position. I don't think he's going to be one of these huge offensive threats, but I think he's going to be a solid two-way forward. We look around the league and you need to have that balance of 2 solid centers. You know, you look in Tampa Bay, they got Point and Stamkos. You look at Pittsburgh, they got Crosby, Malkin. You look at Toronto, they got Matthews, Tavares. So you need to have those 2 solid centers really to build a team. I know Toronto hasn't gone far in the playoffs, but still that's a pretty solid 2 forward, 2 center setup. But you need to have that solid base to really build a team. And if they can get a more offensively inclined player to play that first line minutes, maybe like a Yanni Gourde, or down the line, maybe a guy like Alex Wenberg, who we'll touch on later, then Matty Beniers is going to thrive in that 2C position.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think this is a very high quality pick. He's got a strong hockey IQ. He's strong in all areas of the ice. And I think he's, again, you mentioned Sean, captain material. Quite a few people have talked about how great of a guy he is in the locker room and the effect he makes on the ice, in the locker room, everywhere. So that is definitely a possibility for the future in my eyes, and a great pickup from the Kraken here. I mean, it's, again, not much of a surprise. We kind of saw this coming, but this is awesome for the Kraken. So we'll kind of jump here. We'll reset the show, and then we'll get in. It's a bit of a shorter episode today for our debut episode, but starting next week, we're probably going to try to get them around 30-45 minutes at least. So let's reset it here. So you're listening to THW What's Kraken Show, hosted by Tom Pepper, that's me, Sean Raggio, and Adam Kierszenblat, presented by the Hockey Writers. We talk Seattle Kraken hockey every week on iHeartRadio, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Again, make sure to check out our written work at thehockeywriters.com and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. So the Seattle Kraken have a schedule now, and we were all kind of anticipating what their first game is going to be, their home opener, and we know the answer to that now. So first game in Seattle Kraken history, at least regular season history, in Vegas against the Golden Knights, who of course were the expansion team back in 2017. So this is going to be expansion versus expansion. What are your thoughts on this? Was this a good pick for the first game ever in Kraken history? We'll go to you, Adam.
I think it's a great idea because I know that the arena isn't fully ready to go yet. And I think that you want to have that home opener against Vancouver to really build that rivalry. But this is great. We get to see expansion team versus expansion team right off the bat. They get to build a little bit of rivalry. And it also gives the Seattle fans an opportunity to make their way down to Vegas right at the beginning of the season to see their team play in the Fortress for the first game.
For sure. What do you think about it, Sean?
I think that there are 2 goals for the NHL in terms of scheduling when it comes to Seattle. That was to create a rivalry, expansion versus expansion, and to create a rivalry geographical, which would be Vancouver and Seattle. And I think that starting it off with in Vegas is the way to go. I agree with you guys. And I definitely think that having Vancouver as the home opener to create that geographical rivalry is the move as well. I think that it's going to be a bit different now that Ryan Reeves isn't going to be in Vegas. So might be a little harder to get that hate going off the start, but I think it's going to be a big brother, little brother situation there.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the birth of a pretty big rivalry here. I mean, there's the obvious one, Seattle Vancouver, but if you want another big one, it's going to be Vegas Seattle in my eyes. I mean, especially you talk about the pressure that the Kraken have after the impression the Golden Knights have made since their entrance into the league. They've made the playoffs all 4 seasons they've been in the league, including the Stanley Cup, their first ever season. Unfortunately, well, I mean, not unfortunately, they did fall short in from breaking a sports record. They did not win the Stanley Cup in their first season, but of course they've come into the league with a huge splash here, and they're already known as one of the top teams in the league. So the Kraken are going to have a lot of pressure. And after looking at that expansion draft, they clearly have not gone the same route with Vegas. So it's going to be interesting to see how these two teams compare, even though Vegas has had quite a big head start on the Kraken. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this rivalry shapes up. And we'll quickly go back to the we briefly mentioned the home opener for the Kraken is going to be against the Vancouver Canucks, so local rivals just to the north. And I'm going to give this one to Adam first, seeing as though you live in Vancouver. Is there any hype around this game that's coming up, and what do you think we should expect for this?
Well, I think people are very excited about Seattle coming into the league. They've done everything right from a PR standpoint to a social activist standpoint. The roster is a little bit iffy, but you know what? People are loving it here in Vancouver. There's already people who have said they're kind of tired of waiting, 50 years for a good team. So they're going to start cheering for Seattle. There's already infighting within Canucks Twitter, which is infamous in the hockey world. So I think that it's going to be an intense rivalry. Down the line, we're definitely going to see a Winter Classic either at T-Mobile or Lumen Field, and that's just going to be incredible. And I know I'm excited. I'm definitely going to try to drive down for the home opener because first off, I want to see the arena. And I think that this rivalry is going to start off with a bang because the Vancouver Canucks don't want what happened with Vegas to happen with Seattle, where Vegas makes it to their Stanley Cup in the first year and they're constantly making the playoffs. The Canucks people in Vancouver don't want to see that. The Canucks know that. So I think they're going to do everything that they can to, not pick on the Kraken, but make it life very difficult for them.
Your thoughts, Sean? Home opener?
I think that I'm old school in this sense. I want it to be a very physical series. I definitely think that, as you were talking about, especially because you're getting a lot of Kraken fans out of those former Canuck fans, you're going to get a lot of hate, and I think that's going to make it a lot of fun.
For sure. I'm really looking
Must-watch hockey.
I'm really looking forward to that matchup. There's quite a few rivalry possibilities here for the Kraken, and those are two that are going to be right off the bat, started right from the beginning of this franchise's history. And so we'll jump into our last topic for today. Free agency happens. So free agent frenzy, 2 big names the Kraken picked up. Goaltender Philip Grubauer, which was quite a shocker for a lot of people. This was certainly not on my list of potential Kraken free agent pickups. So he's coming over from the Colorado Avalanche, 6-year deal, $5.9 million AAV. And as well up front, Jaden Schwartz from the St. Louis Blues, $5.5 million AAV for 5 years. What do you guys think of these signings? And what does this mean for the future of the Kraken? And is this going to help them this season? Can they compete for a playoff spot? We'll go to you, Adam.
I think that based off of all the moves that we've seen in the Pacific Division, that Seattle definitely can compete. I think that Vegas is going to take a step back. Losing Fleury and losing Reeves is really going to hurt them. LA, they're a team on the rise, so that's something to question. We don't know what they're going to look like. Vancouver, they have one of the top forward groups in the NHL now with their additions, but their defense is like one of the worst in the league from an analytical perspective. Edmonton, who knows? Their defense is looking iffy. So Seattle definitely has that opportunity to jump up. And then there's like a Calgary. We have no idea what's going on in Calgary. We don't know if half their team's going to be traded or not. So look for Seattle really to make a push, and they have a solid enough team definitely to sneak into the playoffs.
Yeah. Sean, what do you think about Grubauer and Schwartz in Seattle? Do we have you? All right, I'll give my bit of analysis while we wait for Sean to get back. So Philip Grubauer, as I was mentioning earlier on, how I love the Chris Driedger pick in the expansion draft. This makes it even better. I mean, this guy is a proven one of the best goalies in the league. He was a Vezina finalist last season. So he had a .922 save percentage last year, 1.95 goals against average, and a 39-1 record to go along with 7 shutouts. So this guy is elite. And this was really a shocker to me that he was ending up on the Kraken. We really heard no speculation or rumors about this. It just came out. You got the tweet that Grubauer heading to the Kraken. And that's the first time we really heard any talk about this happening. And this is perfect in my eyes. Vitek Vanacek traded back to the Washington Capitals. So that 1-2 duo in Seattle is going to be Grubauer and Driedger. And this is awesome. Again, Grubauer has never been the guy to play all the games for your team in a season. He's about a 40-game starter. And again, you look at Driedger, he's started around, he started 23 games this season for the Panthers. So if you just do the math there and you put those two together, you almost have a perfect combination there. If you know that they're proven at these numbers, to have Grubauer as the primary starter, but Driedger not necessarily as a backup, but maybe a secondary starter, if you want to use that as the term. I think this is incredible. And then we go to Jaden Schwartz. This is a guy who can score and make plays. This is going to be a great signing for the Kraken in my eyes. And then you also think back to the playoff experience. He won the Stanley Cup with St. Louis back in 2019, and he was a major player in that Stanley Cup run. 12 goals, 8 assists. So that's 20 points in 26 games. That is incredible en route to a Stanley Cup. He's got tons of experience in this league. He knows what it takes to win a Stanley Cup. Awesome signing up front for the Kraken. I think this instantly makes them a very strong team. And as you mentioned, Adam, I think they can probably be in the talks for a potential postseason spot now after these 2 major signings for the team. And so if Sean is back, do you have any thoughts on these signings? You there?
I think I just jumped back. Yeah.
Grubauer and Schwartz, what do you think of these signings for the Kraken?
And Wenberg.
I think that
yes, can't forget Wenberg.
they needed a number 1 center. I'm not sure Wenberg's a number 1 center, but it was definitely good to solidify another top 6 winger in Schwartz. And I think that having a 1A strong start definitely.
We're cutting out a bit here. All right, well, we'll jump back here. Adam, you did mention Wenberg. We have a couple minutes left here. Let's do a quick. Do you want to give an analysis on Alex Wenberg? What do you think of this? Obviously, not as big a name as Grubauer and Schwartz, but again, another guy that the Kraken picked up in free agency that could definitely play a big role in this franchise to start.
Well, I think that Wenberg has the opportunity to become William Karlsson for like in Vegas. He does have high offensive skill. He's had a 59-point season. He's had a 40-point season, but he's kind of been on the decline. He got bought out by Columbus, kind of bounced back with a 29 points in 56 games with Florida. I'm not a huge fan of the men putting out no trade clauses, because he does have a 10-team no trade clause list, but the contract is short enough that it won't be a big issue, hopefully. But yeah, he definitely has a chance to center that first line, especially with Gord being out until November. So if he can develop some of that chemistry with a guy like Jordan Eberle, with somebody like Jaden Schwartz, that first line could really make a difference. And then when you bring back Yanni Gord and put him as a second line center later on in the year, that could create that 1-2 punch that you need to really drive home a playoff spot.
for sure. And I think this was a much needed pickup to get that center depth down the middle for the Kraken, because after the expansion draft, it was looking pretty dry. But now that you got Matty Beniers in the mix, you got Wenberg, it looks like there's some potential here to develop some good centers here. And Sean, are you with us? You there, Sean?
I'm trying. I've done a couple other shows and I don't know, the Zoom, the Wi-Fi hasn't been this bad. I really don't know what's helping. I think the Kraken are going to have a better season than I have Wi-Fi. That's for sure.
We'll just wrap up the show. Do you want to give your little bit of analysis on free agency, and then we'll head out?
I think they needed a number one center. I think that Wenberg was a solid acquisition, but I don't think he's that. I think I might have frozen again. I think that Schwartz was another good sign. I think he'll be good for them. I think he's a little off last year or two. He could bounce back with that. And Grubauer is good to have a 1A, 1B in net as opposed to relying too heavily on one guy.
Agree. Yep. So we'll see what goes on in the coming days, and we'll be back for another episode next week. So we'll close it out here. So thank you for tuning into this week's episode of THW What's Kraken. We hope you enjoyed the show, and look forward to next week, as we'll be breaking down any Seattle Kraken news and rumors that come up over the next few days. Again, make sure to check out our written work at thehockeywriters.com and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. From Tom, Sean, and Adam, this has been THW What's Kraken.